Submerged is generally a good film. I loved the concept. Some scenes are brilliant. And I'm going to contradict myself here because on the one hand, I didn't like the narrative structure. But on the other, it wasn't a bad idea. So personal preference, the structure didn't appeal to me, but I can absolutely see why they took that approach, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Submerged was released in 2016, is directed by Stephen C. Miller. It's written by Scott Milam, with a cast including Jonathan Bennett, Talulah Riley, Caleb Hunt, and various others. And some people are in a limousine. The limousine ends up in the water. I won't go into too much spoiler detail about how this comes about, but everything within the narrative makes sense, and it's obviously a race against time to get them out. And that part does work really, really well. Terrifies me. Any idea about being submerged in water, I hate it. I can't even go swimming. I absolutely hate it. So it really plays on that fear, and I really felt the emotions, the fears, the anxieties of the characters. Those scenes were really powerful. And on the one hand, I like that it happens very early on in the film. However, and again, I'm going to contradict myself here because I don't like it, but I think it was a good decision. It cuts back and forth between other aspects of the narrative leading up to it, and then the submersion in water, and then back to scenes elsewhere, and then back to the submersion. And it works. And if you don't mind the narrative structure, it works. And the reason I think it was a good idea, for two reasons. A, we get to the submersion really quickly rather than having the events of the film leading up to this. It happens much earlier on. But also submersion generally happens very quickly. So if they had the submersion at the beginning and didn't then cut to the other aspects of the narrative, the film would be over very, very quickly. One way or another, whether they drowned or escaped, it would be over quite quickly. So I actually think it's a sensible decision to give us the submersion every now and then, jumping back and forth between that and other parts of the narrative structure. So I don't think they made a bad decision. In fact, I think it was a good decision because it allows us to enjoy the submersion very early on. And then obviously it would be a very quick film if they didn't cut to the narrative at other parts of the timeline. But for me, it was too much whiplash, and I didn't like it. But that's purely personal preference. I actually think the structure was a very good idea because then I'm not sitting around waiting forever for the submersion to happen. So the pacing was also very good. So I have no complaints about any aspect there, but purely based on personal preference, I only really found the submersion scenes to be interesting. But it does take up a decent amount of time in the film, so that in itself is not a problem. And what's particularly interesting about it is that there are many submersion films where people are in a car and they're stuck. But because we have a limousine here, they've got more space to work with, and it just looked a little different. And I thought it was very effective. Those scenes did make me feel really sick, and they were very, very well done. The performances are brilliant. It was easy to feel the fears, to feel like there was a genuine danger, and I thought that worked very well. Visually, it's very effective, particularly the filming inside of the limousine. Really good use of sound. Visually, it's strong. The story is strong. The structure doesn't appeal to my personal tastes. That's not unique to this film. In general, it's not my preferred narrative structure, but I think they made the right decision. And in general, I think it's worth watching. Submerged is ultimately a decent film, and if it sounds like your kind of experience, then I'm happy to recommend it.